There was a moment when I remember clearly too, where I had to make a decision, not about the channel and not about the podcast. This was before any of that. I had to decide whether I was going to keep pretending that I hadn't saw what I saw, keep going by what most people do and file it all away, call it a trick of the light, move on with my life. Couldn't do it. Absolutely couldn't do it. And honestly, I don't think I even had a choice. Once you've had an experience that doesn't fit into the world you thought you knew, you can't put it back in the box. It don't go back in the box. Tonight, I'm talking about what actually started all of this. The early encounters, the whole thing. Yeah, that is where we're at. So, just to give you an idea of where it all really started out, where the journey started for me. I was what, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. The first time that I really started experiencing any kind of craziness at all. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, and I think it was like a dream. I can't remember exactly what put me there that one day. But I woke up and I was just, as my mom would say, oh my God, I was miscombobulated. And I thought to myself, I ain't right today. This is not right. Something is really off here. But I got out of bed. I kind of like looked around and I thought to myself, okay, started getting myself ready for the day. And I just remember thinking, wow, what if everything that I'm doing right now, what if everything that I think I understand really doesn't even exist? I mean, this was going through my kid head. I was like, what if this is just really all a dream? And, at this time, like, I didn't know a lot about the whole concept of life and death, religion, any of that. So I didn't have concepts like that. Obviously, at that age, you don't really a lot of times. So I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, well, here we are. Um, and then, so let me back up a minute here because there's a little bit of before the before, and that is that my biological family and my adopted family, the family who raised me in the beginning, they were friends. Now, the woman who adopted me could not have children. She actually, just before I was born, had she had a fallopian pregnancy, and they found that when they were going in to remove some cyst that they had found, and they just wound up having to do a whole lot of stuff and taking out all the stuff, and the baby did not make it either in the process. It was fallopian pregnancy. Obviously, it was not going to go to term. So then there was me, and so an agreement was struck that I would be taken uh, from my biological family and put into my adopted family's home. They would take me, and so the family that I grew up with was not actually my biological family, even though they all lived in the same area, they were all connected, blah, 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 whatever. Um, was a very unusual circumstance all the way around. I'm not gonna get into the whole thing with my family and, my biological family and, their thing because that is a whole story for another day, but I will say that, they were very different, and they went by a different theology, they went by a different, uh their culture was just very different all the way around. Uh, well, anyway, at some point when I was 9, the biological or the adopted mother, uh, had issues from the, fallopian pregnancy and developed infection and passed. I was very close to her. It was a very tight relationship between the adopted mother and I. As a matter of fact, when they first told me that I was adopted, I really didn't understand the concept. I was too young. I was like 7 years old. And trying to wrap my head around the fact that my mother wasn't really my mother, but she was, but she really wasn't. That's the way it was literally explained to me. Um, it was a lot. But then the concept of her passing was also hard for me to understand because I didn't have a clear understanding of the theology of life and death and what that meant, and the whole concept of a God thing was kinda alien to me, quite frankly. But I, in my infinite wisdom, decided I was going to start trying to explore the concepts. So I started a lot of exploration, reading the Bible, the Gitas, the Vedas, all kinds of texts, all kinds of scripture, all kinds of religious theology, all of it. I wanted to know everything. And of course, at that time, I had plenty of time to read. So I got a full, it's like the buffet was open and I feasted. So there was that. And in the process of all that, I started thinking about all of those things, all the strange because there's strange things mentioned in scripture and so forth. I mean, you got angels visiting people and descriptions of angels, and you've got these strange flying things that come around people, and you've got dead people coming back to life and all kinds of crazy, wild stories that just in my head, I was like, wow, this is nuts. This is not how the world really operates, right? I mean, you wake up, you eat, you go to school, you do the thing, you come home, you do the thing, you go to sleep, and you start the day over. And this is what happens in the real world. I mean, this is when you're a kid, this is how your mind operates, right? So for me, all of these ideas, all these crazy ideas about eh, other realms and realities of angels and spirits and people manifesting things and all the theology was incomprehensible. And so I was like, okay, so I tried to walk through this. I tried to guide myself through this a lot of times. I started experimenting with meditation, mantras, uh, that sort of thing. Working with crystals. Yes, I started working with crystals at a very early age. Um, and then I remember having a very unusual because I was we didn't have like a lot of the television shows, no podcast, any of that, very few books even about any of the occult or paranormal activity, not like now. it was sparse, it was in between. It was stuff that was just not accessible in a lot of ways. So, like, you had some television shows. Leonard Nimoy did a show, I think. There was a couple of others, unexplained phenomena, that kind of thing. And I would watch those avidly, like, I was so into that stuff. When it would come on, I would watch, like, I would remember seeing the Patty video. God, I don't even remember how old I was. I was, like, old enough that it scared the crap out of me, but at the same time, I had no concept of, like, I mean, I this the show that I watched, the Patty video, also had, like, a couple of UFO encounters and talked about Nessie. It just threw all the stuff in there, and I was eating it up. But the thing is, like, me trying to relate to that, like, because the concept, the things that I was always up against was people telling me, especially the adopted father, was very clear about I need to learn how to act my age, stop living in a fantasy world, all the things, all the logical stuff, right? Always constantly trying to drag into me living in the now, living in reality, the reality that he saw as reality. So when I would look at these things, I was like, how does any of this fit into what I know? How does this fit into my story? And it didn't. We lived not too terribly far away from, a lot of technology, a lot of military, a lot of that sort of stuff that I would later discover had some concepts, some connection to concepts that I would later come in contact with. But I had no freaking idea, none, what, wow, what was gonna be happening with my world. But let me get to some of the good stuff, though, because that was kind of like where my head was at and where I was at. So, the first tangible thing I remember happening that really started making me go, "Really? Really now?" So we had in the town that I grew up in, we had like one convenience store. It was actually a gas station and a convenience store. And there was a grocery store, a little tiny grocery store. It was like, I don't know, it was what was this? Cecil's Grocery. Um, Tiny, tiny little building, block building. It was horrible. And and they carried like the basic stuff and all the stuff you need, milk, soup, that kind of thing, bread. Um, Going to the convenience store, though, was a big deal. It was like that was like Disneyland in that neighborhood, okay? That's how small this area was, how small of a community we were. And so it was I know it was a school night and it was dark already, it was cold out. It was definitely cold out because I grabbed my coat and, because they were like, "Hey, we're gonna go to the convenience store." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to the convenience store." So I grabbed my jacket, and of course, I'm running outside, waiting on the adults, and I'm doing what I always do because it was a very clear night. It was cold and very clear, and, the moon was out. It was very pretty, actually, and I was doing what I always do, which is looking up at the stars and the moon, and it was just in the country where it was dark, you could see all the things, and, there was pine trees, a thicket of pine trees across the street from me, and I was looking over just over the top of the trees at the stars, and all of a sudden, coming over the top of the pine trees were these 4 extremely large, glowing, like, football shape, orange objects in a box formation, and they were flying in the direction of uh, what would be an army base, and I knew that that was an army base because in that direction because occasionally they would have rocket testing and stuff like that at this location, and I would Austin, hey, um, I would forever remember exactly that location all the time because you could hear, like, when they would blow rockets and so forth and test engines and all that stuff, um, the whole house, like, the house would shake from the sound of the booms and so forth. It was just phenomenal. But anyway, so I'm watching and I'm looking, I'm thinking to myself, "Did I just see that? Dude, did somebody just drive over the house in 4 bright orange footballs?" And I'm thinking to myself, and even more importantly, did I really see that? And do I need to tell the parents I saw that? Yeah, no, let's not do that. So, and while I'm sitting there staring at the sky going, "Oh, what do I do now?" Here they come out, and, and of course, I get in the car and I we go and we do the thing and come back home. All night long, I was thinking about it. I was like, "Did I really see that? Did I really see that?" Um, and this would be the theme for a lot of things. Did I really see that? And I let it go for a bit, and I kept trying to put it out of the back of my I was like, but every time I saw one of those television shows or read a book or something, I would always see those 4 lights going over the sky, and I'm like, "Wow." Um, there would be 2 more times that I would see things that I would go in the sky flying that I was like, "What is that, and did I really see it?" 2 of them, the 2 big ones I saw was the week of 9/11. Yeah. One of them was, like, actually in Champaign, Illinois, flying very low to the ground. I'm talking a few hundred feet up. It was like you could it I literally like, if it would have been making noise, I would have thought that what I was seeing were 3 helicopters because they had those it had bright lights on, bright, um, like, searchlights, kind of, it looked like, and it was flying. There were 3 of those lights, 4. There were 4, actually. I think we're in box formation now that I'm thinking about it, and they were flying in a way that was constant at a steady speed, and they were making no noise, and it was almost like they were starting to follow the vehicle that we were in for a bit, but then they did a thing and moved off, and I'm looking at my friend that's driving the car, and I'm going, "Dude, did you just see that?" And he's like, "No, we didn't see that. We did not see that. This is the no-fly zone. There's nothing supposed to be flying right now." Whatever that was, no. And the other one, like, the same week, I went to my mom's house in Chicago, and I was looking up at the sky, and this thing was a bright, bright, bright light that just come whizzing over the house, and it was doing so in a way that made me think that it was on a mission, and I thought, "It's a no-fly zone. This is Chicago. The airports are closed, so whatever this is, I didn't see that." Um, yeah. was a lot of that. Probably the freakiest thing though for me wasn't so much the UAPs, and I even hate using that term, but that's kind of the reality of the situation, right? Um, it was the dreams that didn't go away and the weird, so here's a classic example of what I'm talking about. So my stepmother, because he got remarried eventually, he got remarried 3 months after Amy died, actually. And the stepmother was extremely charismatic, like backwoods freaking Christian, very backwoods. And we're talking about like, I don't even want to go into it. It was so crazy. So, bun hair, the higher the hair, the closer to Jesus, right? That sort of thing. So she didn't believe in any of the craziness, right? And uh, anything that was outside of their theology was dynamic and whatever. So there was one morning though where when I came to the breakfast table, she had this weird look on her face. And she kind of puts her hand on her hip like this and she cocks her head and she goes, "Funny thing, last night I got up to go to the bathroom and I thought I heard somebody walking around your room. So I decided I would go check and see." She said she got to the door and she not only heard somebody walking around my room, but she heard people talking. She said, "It's really funny though, because I opened the door and the room was dark. You were asleep because you were snoring. There was nobody in there, no lights on, no people." So she said she closed the door, headed back to the bathroom or the bedroom. She heard somebody still walking around in the room, but she didn't try to go back and check because she had already checked. She's like, "That was so weird." That she's like, "That was kind of creepy." And she talked about that a couple of other times, people walking around in my room and talking. Um, One time in particular, she raised her voice at me and because she would get mad about absolutely nothing. And I thought she was getting ready to like have another one of her tantrums where she come up and smacked me or something. And it was so weird because I was getting all freaky and weird and worried about should I run or not. And she was like going, like the voice just kept getting higher and higher. And at a certain point, like all the pictures in the living room or the room that we were in, I think we were actually in the kitchen, literally just fell off the wall. And she turned around and her eyes was really big and she looked at the pictures and she was like, "What just happened?" And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna, I don't, well, I don't know. Looked like they fell down. And I just walked out of the room because I was like, mm-mm. I'm not gonna be there for her. Lord God, help us from these demon things. Oh, no, no. So these experiences like that, there were like times when things would move around in the house or whatever. There were things that times when I remember one night I was watching, I had one of those old black and white analog televisions in my room I got for Christmas one year. And you had to change, you had to turn the knob to change the 3 stations we got. You had to change the knob to get to move the channel, right? So, I'm sitting there, I'm watching television, and all of a sudden my channels started changing on their own. The knob was, like, doing a thing, And I'm going, I look at the TV and I'm thinking to myself, not tonight. Nope, nope, we're not doing this. So I turned off the TV and I went to bed. And I remember that night, like tossing and turning a lot. I didn't get much sleep because I was kind of weirded out by that. Uh, the, we had so where we lived at in the country because in the spring and summer when it wasn't too hot, you raise the windows so you get fresh air in the house. That's what we did. And so I was during the summertime, I would always raise my window because I liked the smell of, I think it was the time of year where the honeysuckles were blooming. And I loved the smell of honeysuckle. And so I had my window raised. And I'm sitting there, I'm watching my TV and I'm watching the window doing this. It's just like going down and down. It's just, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, okay, so I guess I need to like prop my window open with a stick or something. So I find a stick and I prop the window open. The stick decides to just fall over and the window starts going down. I'm like, okay. So I do it again, right? And get the same results. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not good. I want my window open. So I raised my window even higher, didn't put the stick in it. It stayed good for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden, bam! And I'm like, no. A lot of stuff like that kept happening. Windows opening and closing on their own, TVs doing crazy stuff, stuff moving, a lot of stuff like that. But then, as time went on, I mean, there were dreams that happened. There were times when, like, I remember my grandma and I one day was like sitting at her table because she lived right next door to us, and she would sit at the table and talk forever about everything. We mostly, she would like tell me about television shows we just got through watching a day before together, and she would sit there and walk through the whole show like I never saw it. And, of course, I would just sit there in awe listening to grandma because that's what you did, right? And, we were like, all in the conversation. I'm, like, listening to grandma having a good old time rehashing the show, and all of a sudden, she stops in the middle of a sentence, which never happened. This woman never stopped talking, ever, for any reason, and her eyes were really and she was focused on the door, and I'm like I follow her eyes to the door, and there's a silhouette of a woman's, like, shadow on the door from the outside. Well, of course, she gets up, and you can clearly see there's a window next to it. You can clearly see if anything moves out there. There's a window next to it. You can see very clear through it. Woman could talk all day long, but she kept some damn clean windows. So we were sitting. She got up off the table, went open the door, nothing there. Nothing had moved, nothing was there. Shadow was gone. Whatever was there, gone. And so these sorts of things happened constantly, constantly during that time period. And through most of my young life. So as I got older and I started wanting to investigate and research, and I did lots of research when I got the opportunities to. Um, the paranormal, I would just I sunk everything into it, everything. Like, all of my being went into my research, like, I would dissect books and go to the library and pile up books as high as I could get them on my table and go through them and read them and study the photos and there was all of this stuff that went with that. It's like I remember the first time I saw, any type of relation to um MJ12, the Majestic 12 document. Like, you wanna talk about somebody that was in euphoria. Oh my god, that was, like, the best piece of pie I ever had. Like, I had to learn about this thing, and so that led into the whole following conspiracies and diving down rabbit holes and just being just engrossed and drawn into all the things. And so what started out as experiences led into curiosity and led into, a lifetime of exploration and a lifetime of research and interviewing people and asking questions and demanding answers. It wasn't like, I never once was one of those people that would, just somebody would tell me, "Oh, you know, I saw this thing in the sky and it flew over and it was about, the size of a car and, and it had red lights or whatever." And, and it just flew over my head and I went and had a taco and whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute. So what did you see? What did you experience? What did you smell? What did you taste? Always trying to find out what it is, how it affected them, what was around, what did they really see that day. I never wanted to settle for, just the quick answer ever for any reason. It's like, was it round? Was it square? Was it oblong? Did it look like a cigar? Did it look like a pine cone? What did it do? What did it sound like? What happened to the reality around you when you saw this thing? Those were the questions I would be asking, and people were like, "Wait a minute, dude, it was just a thing." And I'm like, "No, it can't just be the thing. You gotta understand there's more to it than that." I know because 'cause I've seen these things. I know what happens. And as the journey progressed, as I began to understand more and more about the thing and the rules that governed the thing and how realities, how timelines, how the very ground that we walk on affects the thing, the journey became more and more and more um, enlightening, eventful, creative, impactful, empowering. And I had another decision to make. And that decision was, so what? What do I do with this? What do I do with the information? And first of all, you have to gather the information. That was the thing. That was the new thing, was gathering data, collecting information, research to find out the who, what, where, why, and how. And I remember the first time I went to, the first and only time I actually went to a cattle mutilation investigation, stepping into there's a space when you get to a mutilation. There's a space, and it's about roughly about 75 feet or so, I would say, of space around. the animal that is what we call a cone of silence. And when you walk into that, that's exactly what it becomes. It becomes a dead zone. It becomes a zone where there's no sense of time or space, no sound, no feeling. The senses, no sense of feeling, no sense of taste, touch. Like you can see, there's nothing to hear. There's no sound. It's literally a vortex, a void. And within that space, you know, there's it just is. And that's the only way you can really describe it, is it just is. Um, there's no I mean, there's really no good way of yeah, there is no good way of putting it. It just is. Um, there's a sense, like, that you are still on Earth. You know that you're still you know that there's the animal there. You know that the surroundings on the outside of this space are still normal, but there's a sense that everything in that space has stopped. And that is that's the cone of silence. That's where reality seems to shift. It seems to everything is stopped. That's the best way to put it. Um, devices tend not to work in the cone of silence. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, this is like when I walked out of that, it was the most weird, crazy, like incomprehensible feeling when you step outside the cone of silence and the world around you is still acting and reacting the same way it always has. You're still smelling and you're still feeling. You can feel the sunlight. You can smell the air and see all of the bright greens and other colors of summer. Um, you can feel your feet on the ground again. You, this is this is where the normality is on the outside, right? And for me, you know, trying to record that data, trying to record the things happening inside the cone in a way that made sense and logic was very difficult because how do you describe nothing? Which is what essentially you were walking into, was nothing. And then going back into the something, and the something was the only way you could put it was complete. You know, and so these were the things that's data, you know, it, the concept of you know, when you're walking into a place that's haunted, you know, is what's the humidity like? What's the temperature like? What's what is the dew point? What all the things that the data that you want to collect about the place. What is the baseline of the RF reading? What is the what you know? Is there are there sounds that are consistent? Do you hear the humming of electrical equipment or machinery? Is the air damp? Does it smell of mildew? All the things, all those pieces of information that you want to collect for for that spot. And if any anomalies happen, you know, what's the change at that point? And it became a fact-finding mission. It became a journey of data, of numbers, of statistics, a journey of compiling information that you could compare to other experiences like it or similar to it. Sometimes it's hard to have an experience like anything, but it was this stage of the journey became a fact-finding mission, and it became the part of the journey where um, you wanted to know the things, and you wanted to comprise the data and compute all of those things to come up with logical answers to things. Yeah. Was the sounds that people were hearing, was it from pipes rattling? Was it were doors opening because of change in temperature and humidity? Were the strange images that would show up on video or on your thermal camera or whatever, was it an anomaly of some type because of um, natural phenomena or paranormal phenomena? And so the journey shifted from one of awe and wonder to one of uh, gathering all of this data and, like I said, using it to try to form ideas and opinions and get an idea of consistency. You know, if you have anomalies in this one area, and is it consistent that the temperature drops each time? And if it does here, is it doing the same thing in the next place? So this is where the journey began to, you know, for me, become one that kind of solidified in a lot of ways. Um, my interest, because I learned, you know, that is more than just collecting stories. It's more than just collecting bits and pieces of photographs and other, you know, other evidence, casting plaster tracks and collecting hair. It's more than that, and I feel like for me, the journey, I mean, the podcast, the um, doing what I do, sharing the information through media, through social media, and other ways, it's accumulated into that and has grown into that and it morphed into that. But it was never that to start with. And that was not the intention to start with. It wasn't I didn't wake up one day, decades ago and go, gee, when I grow up, I think I want to do a podcast about the paranormal. No, all the steps led to this moment of sharing and exploring in new ways. The interviews, learning about people and their experiences, and gathering data with other people. I've worked with Austin Lawrence uh, on one experience so far, and I hope to work on them with him with more because he's a really fun person to work with for one thing. He and Lydia are great, to work with, and, but it's also very it's expanding, uh, and I don't even know how to qualify that really, because it's when you're working with other researchers, it gives you an opportunity to, you know, not only explore an area, um, with others who have different views, different opinions, different insight, um, but it gives you the opportunity to learn from them. Learn what how they do their thing. You know, it gives you insight into what they're experiencing at the time and what they see and what they're collecting data-wise and so forth, all the things. It helps you to expand your experience by sharing in their experience. So, you know, the journey has progressed from, experience or an experience to research and collecting of data and investigating to being, you know, sharing the information and gathering the data and doing the things to answer some of the questions. Maybe rarely, rarely do we actually have an answer to anything. We usually wind up with more questions when we have answers, but the journey has led me to a place where now it's a mission that is completed through the act of social media, through the act of researching and going, you know, head to head with other experiencers, other investigators, and finding the things that matter in that. And so, I say all that to say this, that the journey of Magical Journey podcast has been vast and it's been expansive and is encompassed a lot of different uh, parts over the years. And in that journey, that search, there's been many, many doors open, many changes, many ways of being able to learn and grow. And the growth is consistent and constant. Um, and I could say a lot more about the things, but what I will tell you tonight in closing, because we're getting very close to the top of the hour here soon. Um, the Magical Journey podcast uh, is an experience. It is a object. It is a labor of love. It is a daily experience, sometimes an hourly experience. It can be frustrating, challenging. Sometimes it can bring anxiety. Um, but it's a challenge. It's kind of the mud that the lotus grows in, if that makes sense. It is thinking, it is reasoning, it is working out um, the questions and the struggles and exploring the unpredictable, the unknown, sometimes the unknowable, And it's about even in the process of mind-boggling confusing chaos, even in the midst of all of that, reaching in and finding courage and faith and strength and the totality of who you are in a sense. Um, I think it is for me kind of a love-hate relationship, to be honest with you at times. Um, do I sometimes want to say, I don't want to do this anymore? Absolutely. And do I question sometimes, have I gone a little farther north of sanity than I really wanted to? It happens. It happens. Um, but the end game is that all of this somehow brings meaning. It somehow brings meaning. So yeah. Anyway, I I've done a lot of reflecting tonight and a lot of talking and a lot of reminiscing. Um, but just know this, know that the journey is definitely worth it. And the journey is a gift and a curse at times, I guess. And it is as amazing as you want it to be. You know, we're in control. We are in control of your of our journey. And that is something that that I'm most grateful for. Very grateful for the fact that I am in control of the journey that I'm on and the path that I'm taking now. So let me see right quick. I want to drop you guys a little teaser. I have not got my I don't have the upcoming shows listed yet for the next few weeks, but next week I have Bruce Brown coming on. He's going to be talking about some more incredible experiences that he's had. Um, and if you haven't seen Bruce before talk about his experiences, come by next Friday at 7:15 and you'll be in for a treat. Um, May the 24th, Anna Kaywood Jones is going to be back with us. I had Anna on last year and an episode where she did live from um, from the LBL. We'll be talking about more experiences that she's had in the LBL coming up. On May the 1st, I've got Barb Hartman, which is an amazing, like my female guests coming up. Both of them are incredible people. Um, Barb is out of Washington State. Just has some very good experiences lately to talk about. And then on May the 8th, I have Trey Hudson coming back to talk about the Meadows Project. We're going to go into the Return to the Meadows, the book, which is the second book that of his writing. And then on the 15th, I have Les Durant coming back on or coming on. I met him co-hosting with Tom Franklin from the Eye of Jupiter a few weeks ago, and it was a really good, a little crazy, but a little good episode, a real very good episode. He's got some very interesting photographs to show us of potential sky creatures as well as UFOs, and so I'm looking forward to that. We have a really good lineup coming up in the next few weeks. Again, like I said, starting next week with Bruce Brown, who is just absolutely amazing. I love talking to him. His stories blow my mind. So watch for those. I'll be posting those in the upcoming episodes for Magical Journey. And I've got some others that I'm waiting for responses from that I'll be posting as well. So hit that like button, the subscribe button, and click that bell to get your prompts for what's happening where with us. And don't forget also to join us on Facebook, the group Magical Journey Podcast, for updates on what's happening and what's coming up on the podcast. And that's kind of it for tonight. Thank you guys for showing up and being part of this. I regret that Harley could not be here tonight. He needs to take a break, and I'm very on board with that. So we'll have him back on whenever he's feeling better and feeling more like doing the podcast. But yes, anyway, I will look forward to talking with you again soon, and may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something